I'm going to be talking to you guys about the 4 fastest ways to build wealth, how I've done it, what I've learned thus far, what I'm continuing to learn on my journey to financial freedom. We're going to be talking about the little nitty gritty things and what you should be thinking about and what you can do as someone who was not born into a wealthy family and is still on her own journey. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The very first way that I know that is the fastest way to build wealth is to be born into a wealthy family, because wealth was passed down to you. Now that that's out the way, we're going to go into the other 3 ways, the fastest ways to build wealth. Second fastest way to build wealth is to invest. And I'm not talking about investing in the stock market. Contrary to popular belief, investing in the stock market, like the S&P 500, is not the fastest way to build wealth, right? Unless you've already got a ton of wealth and so you're compounding on tens of millions of dollars, it's not the fastest way to build wealth. And if you already have tens of millions of dollars, that's also not your easiest or quickest way to build wealth anyway. And so if you're starting from, you're not being born into a wealthy family, when I say invest, what I'm talking about is you're investing into startups that end up taking off. You're investing into real estate, right? So you become a real estate investor. Like some of the people who I studied, some of the millionaires and billionaires actually who I studied, who I watch, who I learn from, who I try to participate in their programs, go to their conferences, so on and so forth. Real estate. Real estate was how they built their empire. Real estate was how they built their wealth, right? And so that's what I mean when I say invest. I'm talking about startups. I'm talking about think about the Amazons, think about the Nvidias, think about all of those tech startups, think about even other I don't even know, other tech startups that if you get in early, or if you were, you had stock in early, then blew up over time, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I say investing. And again, of course, real estate, I'm not talking about the stock market, because by all means, the stock market, if you're only investing $100 a month or $1,000 a month or even $5,000 a month, it's going to take, 20, 30 years for that to compound to hundreds of millions of dollars. And you might not even get there. Most people won't get there, right? So that's not what I'm talking about. So that's the second fastest way to build wealth. The third fastest way to build wealth is to start a business. Yes, it is to start a business. If you do a Google search or you do some deep diving and some digging, and I've done this already. I've read the books, I've done the audiobooks, I've looked into these people, I've studied these people. If you do a deep dive and you look at your self-made, emphasis on self-made millionaires, self-made billionaires, what they have done is they have started a business. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a pretty high percentage of those self-made millionaires and self-made billionaires. They started a business. Rihanna, obviously, she comes to mind. She was obviously a millionaire even before starting Fenty Beauty and starting her lingerie. But that is what made her a billionaire, right? Is starting those companies. Think about, again, I can use your tech startups, your tech founders, Amazon, Apple, all of those different people. Again, recognizing that maybe they weren't self-made. But the point is, the majority of people who are self-made millionaires or billionaires got there by building a business or starting a business. And so here, if you're looking to build wealth, what you actually want to start doing is saying, what business can I start? And the best way to think about this is, what is something I am an expert at, or something that I am passionate about, or something that I have been through and gotten through that was a big struggle and now I can help other people through, right? And so I talked about this in one of my businesses already, building a business to $100,000 from scratch. But essentially, you need to find a need and then fill that need. But instead of kind of jumping in and try to find the need first, focus on what you have, focus on your qualities, focus on your abilities first. Again, I talked about this before, but that's how I started my business, right? That's how I started my law school coaching business. I was like all 3 of those things. I was passionate about helping people getting into law school, getting into top law schools, performing well in top law schools. There was no one out there when I was applying to law school who specifically did what I wanted to do, who specifically had landed the top big law firm jobs, who landed the clerkships and was helping other people do that, right? There was no one out there when I was going through it that did that would help me do it. And so again, I had this issue that I had no one to help help with. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be that person. And then finally I had the expertise, right? I had done the podcast. I had done all the things. I landed and did the federal clerkships. I landed and did the big law job. And so again, like I fit all three of those categories, but you only need to fit at least one to think about like, okay, like what's the business I want to start, or what's the business that I think is going to be beneficial to others based on those three categories. Once you kind of figured out those three categories and gotten some ideas written down, then that's when I would say like, figure out where's the biggest need, where is the biggest pain point, right? Because when people have pain, when people are like dying for an answer, they need someone to help them do this thing or to help them fill that gap, that is where your best business idea is going to come into play. And then that's what you're going to probably roll with. There's a couple of other nuances there. Like, for example, you want to start thinking about, because if you're going to financial freedom, is this business idea scalable? Can I scale this business idea so that it can get me to financial freedom? How much of my time is going to be required in this business when it's making hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars? If it requires a bunch of time, then you won't have that financial plus time freedom. When I say financial freedom, I also just naturally include time freedom, because for me, if I'm financially free, it means that I'm also free with my time. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, right? And so you want to make sure that the business you're building meets these qualifications that you may be having. But again, this is still, so we covered like being born into a wealthy family, we covered investing, and now we're covering starting a lucrative business. This is still one of the quickest ways to build wealth. I'm not sitting here telling you it's going to happen in a year or 2 years or even 3 or 5 years, right? But again, it's still one of the quickest ways to build wealth. And when you're thinking about your business as well, even if it may require you to put in a lot of time, which it will at the front end, but even maybe when it's making millions, you can also think about, well, maybe I want to build this business and then I want to sell it. A lot of successful people, that is their goal, or that is what they do, right? They build this business and they get it to a certain point and then they sell it. I actually had the wonderful pleasure of meeting Sheila Johnson, who, if you don't know, was one of the founders, I think, along with her now ex-husband, of BET, and she sold BET, and that's how she became a billionaire. Right. So Sheila Johnson, she sold BET, which was her company, and sold it for a few $1 billion, billion with a B. Right. And so that's another way. Again, you can start thinking about these things. I started listening to the audiobook because I was on a long flight a couple weeks ago, The Millionaire Fast Lane. Oh my gosh, I love it. It is so good. Highly recommend if you haven't listened or read the book. And that's how he became a multimillionaire. He started a business. I believe in the book he said he was 28 or in his late 20s, and he became a millionaire not too long thereafter, maybe in his early 30s or somewhere around there, or maybe he became a millionaire at 28. I don't really remember, but the point is the same thing, right? So starting a business where there is a need and then filling that need with your business, and honestly going ham, right? Putting all your time and effort into that business as much as possible. The fourth fastest way to build wealth is to solve rich people problems, okay? And now you're like, Sephora, what do you mean? What I mean is, and this kind of blends a little bit into number 3, but also not necessarily, and I'll explain the difference. But when I say solve rich people problems, you cannot build wealth if what you are creating, there isn't enough people to buy it, number one, or the small amount of people who are able to buy it can't afford it. Right. And so again, let me break that down. If you are selling something or you are starting something and it's going to be $50,000, but you're selling it to the average Joe, nobody is going to buy it. Right. So you have a $50,000 product, or you have this $50,000 invention, but you don't have the audience for it. And so you're not going to make any money. You're not going to become wealthy from it. So you need to make sure you have the audience for whatever it is you're going to sell. And so if you're selling something for $50,000, you need to sell it to rich people. It needs to be a problem that rich people have, or that corporations have, or that big brands have, basically that someone who can afford it has, right? And so the second piece of that, if it's not a problem that rich people have, if it's not a problem that corporations have, if it's not a problem that big brands have, then it needs to be able to be marketed to millions of people. Right? It needs to be able to be marketed to millions of people who can afford the thing, right? And so if you think about it, you can think about Apple products, right? How many people own Apple products? I have my phone right here. I have my laptop over there. I have my iPad right there, right? How many people own Apple products? I don't even know. Millions of people, like millions of people own Apple products. And so the audience was there. Maybe if you decided to become a real estate investor and you only want to sell like $1 million homes, right? Then you need to make sure that you're someone who has access to the people who can purchase those $1 million homes. You need the rich audience. You have to service rich people. And so I guess what number 4 should really be is actually focus on the audience. You really need to focus on who your audience is if you want to build wealth. Whatever you are selling, whatever you're offering, whatever you're building, it has to be catered to your audience. So I'm actually going to combine that into number 3 because it is a little bit of a subset of starting your own business. So the 4th thing that you need to do to build wealth, so this is either a bonus or it's actually the 4th, however you want to think about it, is you have to be an innovator, okay? You have to be an innovator and you have to be an action taker, because regardless of what you do, regardless of the route you choose to take, whatever you want to do, you need to either be someone who starts something new. So you're like when Microsoft was started, when Apple came about, when like whatever it may be, you need to either be someone who starts something new. So you're an innovator and you're creating this new thing that doesn't yet exist, or you're an action taker. Maybe you're working on something that does exist and you are just making it better. Or maybe you're working on something that does exist and you're just doing it better than everyone else, even if it's the same. Maybe you're working on something that does exist, but you are putting in more hard work than anyone else, so you're going to be successful at it, right? So from this action taker category, there's so many different things that can come of it. Like, I'm sure there's so many great, coaches out there, business coaches out there, whatever it may be. But who am I going to go with? I'm going to go with the person who I see the most. I'm going to go with the person who's the most visible. I'm going to go with the person who I think is most knowledgeable, who can help me solve my problem. I'm going to go with that action taker. I'm going to go with that person who makes their expertise clear and known to me. If no one knows who you are, you're not going to be able to sell anything. You're not going to be able to do anything. And so you won't make any money, right? And that's the beauty of like the social media era. And when people ask me all the time, Sephora, how do you find your coaches? How do you find your community? How do you find all these things? On social media, on social media. I search YouTube, I search Facebook, I search Instagram, I search TikTok, and the people who I find, I do my due diligence and I look into them and I see what they're talking about and literally all these things. And so maybe they're not an innovator, right? Like, I don't necessarily think any business coach is an innovator, or any like health coach or relationship coach or trainer or anything. I don't think necessarily like they're innovators. Like, there's tons of people doing this, but they're action takers. They're right in front of my face. They're sharing their expertise. They're sharing their knowledge. And so you have to be willing to do that if you want to make money. You have to be willing to do that to build that audience. You have to be willing to do that so that people can see what you have to offer and give you their money, right? Because if you're not the innovator and you're not the action taker, then you're not going to make any money, right? So you have to be one of the two. You have to be the innovator, the Amazons, the Microsoft, the NVIDIA, AI is like maybe coming a little bit out of like the innovator, but whoever was the first to like develop like ChatGPT, right? If you're not the innovator to where it's like you do this thing and you don't really have to be front and center because it's just so great, nobody's done this before, this is going to help so many people, then you need to be the action taker. You need to be the one who's in front of people. You need to be the one who's building the audience. You need to be doing that thing. You need to be talking about your thing. Right? You can't make money and be behind the scenes if you're not the innovator, or if you're not the person who has the money already to push other people to be in front of the scenes, but that's a whole separate video, right? So the point is here, your 4 fastest ways to build wealth. Number 1, you're born into a wealthy family. Number 2, you're investing. So you're investing in startups, you're investing in tech companies, you're investing in businesses, maybe it's health companies, literally whatever it is, but you're investing in something that has the potential to have explosive growth. You are, or you're investing in real estate. Number 3, you're starting a lucrative business or a business that has a big need, and you're making sure you know who your audience is. Either you're servicing rich people or you're servicing a big enough audience to purchase what you need so that you can build that wealth. Or number 4, you are the innovator, or you are the action taker, or you're both. So those are the 4 fastest ways to build wealth. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, then make sure to watch my previous video on side hustles and why every high earner needs a side hustle. And I will see you guys on my next one. And thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to follow me on social media at Sephora Gray Esquire. That's ESQ for short. Bye.